Hello! In this episode, we're going to talk about wise and discipleship-focused youth group games.
Are we?
Yeah. A question from one of our staff, how to be an embedded influencer, and reviving things that never should have died. Spoiler alert, this is an inside look at one of our biggest organizational struggles.
I think you're right about that.
I think it is. I think it's probably in our top 3 to 5.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
So, hello. How are you?
Hi, Danielle. I'm doing great.
Okay, great.
How about you?
I'm doing great.
Are you? Okay.
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is it always really?
I mean, because you have that tone of voice, and you.
Here's the thing about me.
Okay.
Nothing's ever good. Not really. That's too strong, and that's an example.
Well, but
I have a very.
Your worst case scenario.
I'm just like neutral. I'm like, hey, if nothing's bad,
right,
and nothing's
then I'm fine.
great,
right,
it's fine. And that is 80% of my existence. It's just like, it's fine. Anyway,
inside look at me.
Yeah.
So I use the term worst case scenario.
Yes.
And my wife very much has that as a default.
Yeah.
Of like something comes up, like one of our kids is like, "Hey, I had this thing on my thumb." Oh. And we're down the road of like on the internet of like every possible thumb thing that is going to kill them within the next 24 hours.
Yes.
So, which for what she did, like the thoroughness of it and the like level of detail that she and tenacity is crazy. But like, I made a mistake probably 15 years ago of saying that she's a worst case scenario person. And so now every time she does anything, she's like, "This is not because I'm a worst case scenario."
It is though.
So, but it just reminded me of how you just said, you just went straight into it. Anyway,
anywho,
I'm glad we're all fine.
Okay. Including Kim, including Dave.
Yeah, Kim might not be fine after she hears.
It's cute. You think she listens?
Yeah, she doesn't have time for this.
No. All right. So, mega church memories. This is where we focus on what was, what should or shouldn't have been, is more the case, and what actually endured. Because we were saying like we feel like we learned some things from growing up in the church in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
80s for you, 90s for me.
Okay.
All right, so that's true. Let's talk about Zany youth group games. Also, Zany is very generous of you. Zany.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was, as we look back at some cringeworthy memories from...
I'm going to have to dismiss myself from this segment. I'm actually having wild flashbacks.
Is it triggering?
I'm just having wild flashbacks.
Yeah, so, it was kind of a big thing back in the day for youth groups to try to one-up themselves and everyone else with the weirdest, craziest game. And... it was a thing that everybody would talk about, and hopefully, the idea was
especially at retreats.
The idea was to draw more kids, like to get kids interested in that. So,
and we never disclosed what we were going to do ahead of time.
No,
so it was like,
it was a big
speaking
surprise.
of worst case scenario, they would be getting people just hoping we would be doing something. There were definitely some favorites.
And this one's very personal to us because I was like. You came up through when I was a youth pastor. You were one of the key leaders of the group, and that that continued for many years. We worked in youth ministry together, and so we kind of fell into this thing of one-upping the games.
Yeah.
So what were some of the craziest games that you remember, Danielle?
Well, there's some of the ones you wrote down, so I'll pick other ones, but. I just have very vivid mental snapshots.
Sure, you can see faces.
Oh,
and
faces!
Kids and
one is of a girl who literally had a cow tongue in her mouth, and she was just running with just reckless abandon. It was like a relay race where they had to bobbing for cow tongues.
Right. We cooked.
Who had to cook those?
We cooked. I did.
Did you cook them? Yeah. We cooked a lot of things we shouldn't have, and that one we should have. But and then similar.
You didn't want them with raw cow tongues in there.
No, we would do things like one of the ones that I regret, honestly, but it was hilarious. Was like a garbage bag relay where we had all kinds of gross food in a garbage bag, and I think. You were not there for this.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell.
I think because we always had that one event where you and Kim, it was your anniversary, and you would like leave for a day or Target or whatever. Yeah. Right. So then we went crazy when you were gone.
The cat's away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had like a relay race where like you open mayonnaise and you have to like take a thing, or it could be olives, or it could be like it was nothing dangerous. It was just gross food, sardines, like whatever, or there'd be like chocolate.
Yeah.
But you have to just close your eyes, and you would just run. It was like relay of 10 kids.
Wow.
There was some puking.
Yeah. There's things coming to mind as you're talking.
Yeah.
So, like, do you remember Tape Heads? I didn't put that on here.
Oh my goodness.
Tape Heads was so funny.
Tape Heads was wild.
It was really funny because it was a relay race. That's what brought it to mind. But you would do what's the kind of tape? Duct tape. Duct tape, sticky side out around somebody's whole head like a mummy, but sticky side out. And then there was a table at the one end of the thing with like all kinds of items on it, like bubble gum and little toy soldiers or whatever. And they would just go down and roll their head around the table and try to get as many things stuck to their face, and then come out and dump it into a bucket.
And then
as
much as they could.
The bucket that weighed the most.
And speaking of one-upping, what we one-upped that game? Oh, do you remember?
I don't.
The next level of that game was you picked a kid on your team and you duct taped them to the wall. And whoever stuck the longest won. Right?
So we would just stick them there for days.
Remember? It was always the littlest kids, obviously.
Just duct taped to the wall.
Duct taped fully to the wall.
Oh my gosh.
Listen.
How did we not get arrested?
That's what I'm saying.
Danielle.
Hey, whatever.
Okay,
I was under your influence.
Well, some of the two famous retreat games that seem to endure.
One we only ever played once, by the way.
Which one?
The top one.
No.
Oh, did we do it twice?
Twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, twice.
So the first one was the epic fail one.
The first one was the epic fail.
Go ahead.
We redeemed ourselves a little the second. So, but we always kicked up for years. We kicked off the whole retreat. It was almost like
they knew about this. Yeah.
It was a game called Don't Lose Your Socks. And so kids would come to the retreat with the longest possible socks because they would go up over their knees because they didn't want to lose theirs. Yep. They knew we were going to play
multiple socks, layers of socks.
Yeah. And so it was just basically a massive wrestling match with 160 kids or whatever it was in the middle of the floor all together, trying to rip off each other's socks.
And you had to stay, your legs had to stay on the ground. A knee or butt or something had to be on the butt.
Be on the ground at all times.
But,
so there wasn't a full stand-up combat.
I got hurt.
So the person with the last person with a sock on in the middle won. Oh gosh. And we had to cancel it the final year because it got it wasn't too intense, but it was taking too long. They'd gotten too good at it.
Yeah, it took forever. There were strategies, there were teams, there were alliances. And then there was the one year where they were like, why don't the leaders do it? Do you remember me and Randy Demers? I just about didn't make it.
The problem is we had very competitive leaders too.
That is the problem. Yeah. We have some bad videos.
So here's the other one was called the fish game. And so the fish game was, we got actual, I think they were mackerel.
No, they weren't.
No, what?
They were big. They were like trout. I mean, they weren't mackerel. Mackerel are little,
mackerel
aren't they?
Are small. Yeah, you're right. They were big.
They were probably 12 inches long.
Yeah, and we got them from the store. And the game was outside, and the pairs, one person on another person's shoulders. Mm-hmm. The person on the top had a stocking over their head with a raw egg on top of the head.
Person on the bottom.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. Person on the bottom had the raw egg on top of their head, held there by a stocking that was over their face. And the person on the top had the fish and a blindfold. Mm-hmm. And held the fish by the tail, and they basically just had to go around and try to break the egg on the other person's head with raw fish.
Yeah,
and it became legend.
It became legend, and part of the reason is we left the fish outside at the retreat place.
Oh right, and
they froze. Because it was winter retreat.
That's right.
And so
people
Aaron and I had to put them in the oven. No, we had to put them in the oven. And he brought them out of the oven. That's probably why I'm thinking they're so huge, because they got bloated.
Oh gosh. But also too soft.
And they were just guts everywhere. But they loved it. Everyone wanted to do it.
Yeah. I know that the highlight, but I just thought of one other that has a very inappropriate name, but it was funny. It was called Suck and Blow. Do you remember?
Oh, of course.
Remember Suck and Blow?
Of course. Everyone wanted to play that.
So yeah, it's where you pass a card, playing card from mouth to mouth. Anyway. All right.
So we learned some things.
Did we?
I thought of some.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
So the first one is that Swedish fish are the end times commodity that we all need, because that's all we ever gave people.
That was the prize for every game.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, we had trophies that were like painted gold Swedish fish. Like, yeah.
So you're saying there's kids from our youth group who have stored up boxes of Swedish fish who are going to survive the end times.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They probably last.
Well,
like Twinkies or something. All right. So I thought of 3 things.
Okay.
And it's you to be honest if these are a stretch.
No, go ahead.
So I thought about like value building. So teamwork, inclusion,
yes.
You're kind of, obviously we have fun together. We laugh together. Those are things that have endured even through our culture. Like,
yeah, that's true.
And we just had like in the summer, we just had like a wild staff Olympics that was like, you could tell some of the people that had been around for a while. It went crazy. I think just, and along those lines, like that, the power of just creating moments and shared experiences for people.
Right.
There are people there are people will talk to me about it on a Sunday.
That's true.
People I'll see at the mall or whatever. Yeah. Like, I don't see them anywhere. Just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like you run into people and they're like, oh my gosh, you're the one that made me.
Who are you kidding?
Yeah. And then the other thing, and the reason I thought of this one is the duct tape game. I think it's like it was like hero making. So there would be like certain games. And this was not on purpose. Like, don't think we're like...
Right, geniuses. Yeah, no.
This is retrospective here. I think of like the little kids. Like they would get cheered on, like the 6th graders, 7th graders. They're getting like lifted up and like, oh, the celebration. And it's like so cute.
Well, because part of the thing with the games was they didn't favor the...
Jocks,
it wasn't like flag football where, or that sort of thing, where it favored the kids you'd expect to succeed at everything.
Anybody could do it.
That's funny. That's really interesting.
Those are my 3.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah, let's go with those.
This is a stretch, but let's go. You need to tell us your games because I want. If you have games, submit them.
Submit them.
Let us know. All right. So training notes. This is the chapter of the podcast we dedicate to overflow from staff trainings. We're also actively taking Q&A questions from our staff because some of them are listening to this podcast and we're just like saying stuff and they're like, what?
Right.
So that's today. We have a question from a staff member, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and it's kind of, excuse me, as we've been doing, it's kind of an amalgam of a couple of different questions or ideas that have kind of come out in different settings. Okay. But the thing is just like question about why are we still measuring attendance at stuff? We're making this shift from a mega church model to a missional multiplication model. And so, why would we say, we had 240 people take launch or something like that, or why are we fixated on measuring those things? And the other one is just like as we're developing structures and systems behind the scenes, it's like, well, why don't we just have people living out there calling right now? And again, I'm not saying it's an either or, but that's the question of like why do we still seem to be hanging on to some of these mega church principles when we're trying to shift away from that. And one of the clarifying things that popped into my head is that it was just literally in the middle of one of those conversations is just because we're moving away from a mega church model doesn't mean that we're going to cease to be a big church.
Right.
That there's still a size issue that we have. Grace is a big church and it's a complex church. And a mega church model and a big church are two different. They're not necessarily the same.
Correct.
And so that's kind of the negative. That's the negative side of it. The positive is, I feel like one of our great contributions is in the systems and structures space.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling. I had we talked, I think the last podcast about one of the pastors that came to visit me from kind of a smaller church that was working on deployment and on the, kind of the edges of this space and how much we learned from him from this small church. But like when he walked away, he was just like, oh my gosh, the systems and structures that you're talking about are like a breath of fresh air to me because they were in the middle of that, just kind of letting everybody go and do their thing. Yeah. And I do feel like one of the things that we can do and can contribute to kind of this conversation as we're figuring out the other stuff is even just talking about like, hey, it's still important as a big church that we have systems and structures. It's still important that we get a certain critical mass of people through certain things because that we have that number of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, we'll be gifted with momentum because of those certain things.
Yeah.
It, just like you would get momentum in the smaller expressions in different ways. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, and I think part of at the heart of this has been a long-standing kind of tension I think that churches feel, and that sometimes like if you're in a big church, sometimes it's like, well, big churches are good and small churches are bad. Like healthy things grow and grow, you know. And so there can be that almost arrogance on the big church side, but there's also can be an arrogance on the small church side of people going, you know, well, all churches should just be small. That if you're a big church, it means X, Y, and Z. It means you're watering something down, or it means you're just all about numbers. Or it means, you know, there's a whole list of things that goes against that. And I just kind of want to declare there's no such thing as small church is good, big church is bad, or big church is good, small church is bad. It's like healthy church is good, unhealthy church is bad, you know, and there can be healthy big churches and healthy small churches, and you know what I mean? And so, I don't know, I was feeling some of that tension, but I think just saying it out loud that, like, listen, we're a big church, and we're still going to operate in ways that big churches have to operate, even though we're shifting our model.
And we're shifting our mindset. We're in the process of shifting our mindset of what kinds of things we measure. Yes. That doesn't mean, like you're saying this, it doesn't mean we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes. There are good things that we can keep
about measuring stuff.
Yeah. For me, it made me think of, I feel like there's always been this long-standing idea that like organization and planning are the antithesis of discipleship and listening to the Spirit. That's just like a personal pet peeve of mine as well. Yeah. But I just don't think those things live in conflict. I don't think it's more spiritual to fly by the seat of your pants or just like let things bloom as they may. It's just a different model. It's a different way to do things. It's a different way to approach a problem. Yeah. And I think
the Spirit can move 3 months ahead when we plan it, just as much as He can move in the moment.
Right. Yeah. And that's obviously true for us. Yeah. We've seen that, both sides of that. Yeah. So
I think about one of the conversations I had back in the day with somebody who was kind of a very anti-big church person, and said, I left the big church. I'm just starting a house church, and that house church is going to be kind of the perfect expression of what Jesus had in mind for the church. And I had one very simple question for him: what if it works?
Right.
You know, and so what if those 10 people in your living room turn into 30 people, and they don't fit in your living room, or they turn into 50 people, or they, like, all those people start evangelizing and discipling others. And it's almost like, just what if it works?
And that doesn't mean the answer isn't build a huge building. No. The answer could be, you just need a plan.
Right. You need some system. You
other houses.
You need 2 living rooms.
Right, exactly.
You need 3 living rooms, but that's a system.
It's a system.
You know, and so systems and structures and those aren't evil. Yeah. And they aren't a sign of that we've sold out to some, you know, the culture or something like that. It's they're, let's just all be healthy.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing I thought was kind of cute about this question, it was just the idea, like, why don't we do this instead of just letting people live out their discipleship journey? Yeah. I mean, you could argue we've tried that. Like, we've tried to just...
Yeah, hope that it happens.
Yeah, like, here, give you the tools and just...
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
And, maybe, sure. But this, I feel like, gives us a shot at truly helping people on the ground, which I'm excited about. But.
Agreed.
Okay. As we tweak our assimilation model to have more of a disciple-making focus and invent a multiplication funnel to awake the lake and reach our region, we're learning as we go. Each week, we want to have a topic to discuss in front of you and with you, and a practical moment of learning that happens throughout the week. And today's topic is how to be an embedded influencer. This is one of our Dream Disciple roles, and it says, I understand how God has purposely gifted and positioned me to multiply His work in the world. And today, we have Angus Beibel with us. Hi.
What's up?
Hello. So a little bit about Angus. You're 40. You have spent about 13 years in education. You've gone from Catholic high school to now a public high school, which is cool. You're a single parent of 2. You've served at Grace Kids for like a decade or so, a little more. Yeah. But you've been going to Grace for 17 years. Yeah. And you started you were in and started a lot of groups with men and life groups and things like that, which has been really cool for our culture as well. The one thing I loved about you submitted in your bio, you said that you kind of gave your stats, your dream disciple stats. So I'm going to share them.
Yeah.
So we do these self-assessments. You're the first one that's done it. I think it's so cool.
It's great.
So you rated yourself a 7 as embedded influencer. I think we'd both give you a 9. A 6 as intentional friend, 8 compassionate storyteller, and savvy follower. You rated yourself as a 3, which I also would increase for you.
Oh man, no way.
I would.
The 3 was generous.
Yeah, but that's just that's one of the ways we're measuring this. We're kind of encouraging people to do kind of a beginning look at their number, and then throughout we'll look at it over and over again. So
I gotta tell you that assessment, eye-opening.
Oh, good.
Big time.
Yeah,
that's
good.
And then the realu.org, I was this is the worst survey I've ever taken. It's all, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. And
they're
then
not going to sponsor
at the end, it spits out the report. I'm like, survey, I owe you an apology.
Yeah, and that real you is actually really
amazing.
good. Yeah,
it's well done.
Yeah.
So thank you for those.
Yeah, so thanks for being here.
Yep, glad you're here.
Pull your mic a little closer too, just so
More
you
you
get.
You got
Just
you got to get into
when
that.
you're talking, at least.
But hey, I want to talk before we go to him, and we got lots of good questions for you. I want to just talk about this role for just a minute more with you, Danielle, and just talk about how did this make our list of the dream disciple roles. Obviously, we're defining discipleship locally, and we've tried to search the scriptures and figure out what are some of these character qualities that seem consistent across the ministry of Jesus, with the disciples, with the New Testament, and all of that. So why do you think this role is important for us to highlight?
One of the things we did in that session a while back is we listed names of people who embodied kind of what we felt like was like a dream disciple, like
our church hero
kind of thing. Yeah. And you've always said and have instilled in us, and we believe that like our people are our greatest resources. And so I remember when we started talking about that idea of the people of grace being the church's greatest resources, and being able to know and trust that we have the people that we need to have, that God wants us to have to go out and reach this region. This, I think, was one of the reasons this bubbled to the top. We know we have people who are strategically placed, not by us, obviously, by God, to live out their faith and their calling where they work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good, that I hadn't thought about that, but that list of like Grace Church heroes over the years, and how many of those, as we started thinking about like who are the people that really embodied discipleship. Yeah. We went to not just our inside the walls workers, but like the people who were going, I think about Dick, going to the soldiers and sailors home every day, and the people who like in their actual movements through life were just following Jesus and being an example to others. And so one of my favorite Bible stories that kind of goes with this is just you've probably heard me talk about it 100 times, but when Paul in the book of Acts is trying to, he makes really one of his major life goals is to get to Rome. He wants to get to Rome and get to Rome and get to Rome and start the church in Rome, and when he finally does, like he gets arrested, he declares, he appeals to Caesar, which assures that he's going to finally get to Rome. And when he gets there, it says he greeted the brothers and sisters there. And I always crack up because what that means is the gospel beat Paul to Rome. So cool. The first and best missionary the church has ever had. The gospel beat him to Rome, and it got there on the wings of industry. On the wings of the marketplace. That cool. Traders and people who had come through took the gospel to Rome before Paul got there, and finally he gets there and meets the brothers and sisters there and didn't even have a chance to be the first one. So, I just think about cool. like that, the difference between like the professional church people and the people who are living out their faith in the marketplace, who often the gospel can go faster and further through people who are just living it out than it can through people like me and you who are working in the church kind of thing. So anyway, so embedded great. Influencer, when we got to thinking like who would be a great person to interview and think about when it comes to this, Angus, you were at the top of the list, and we've known each other for a long time. I want you to talk a little bit about your journey here. We're going to get to the teaching thing in just a second, but I think when you and I first started connecting, it was around some of your impact and influence and conversations you were having with some atheists, actually a formal group of atheists that you were like crashing their party every once in a while.
I remember
talking
these
about
stories.
Jesus.
The Erie Atheist Society. So the background on that is we Beers, Bros, and Bibles.
Okay,
the Bible,
wow,
the notorious
Here we
Bible
go.
study. Lots of people, you know what I mean? But we were going to attend this, like, I guess it was like a debate. Oh, what the heck was his name? I can't think.
Frank Turek.
Yeah, Dr. Frank Turek. Yeah.
Versus
like some guy or no, he gave a talk.
Yeah, he gave
and
a
a
talk.
bunch of atheists were like kind of trolling it a little bit. They weren't. They were very respectful people. They had questions, and they had really good questions. But pre that, I was like, you guys, we should go to this. This is all we do is like apologetics, debate the Bible. Like, we need to go there. And so we did. But I was like, hey, listen, here's the thing. This drives me nuts when I see it, but like, we are not gonna laugh. We're not gonna shout. We're not like, it's not us versus them.
Yeah.
Those are, we just read this the other day from C.S. Lewis. You do not ever meet a mere mortal. Those are all souls that Jesus cares about at least as much as you. Maybe more, you don't know.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna laugh. We're not gonna, you know what I mean? We're not gonna comment or be rude or whisper anything like that.
Yeah.
So when we went, it was still difficult for some, you know what I mean? I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And so some of the atheists, I was like, that was actually a really good question, and I don't feel like it got a good answer. And so I ended up, we were the last ones at the church. It was like 2 a.m. Me and this one guy were just debating back and forth, and we ended up being friends, and we're still friends on Facebook.
That's cool.
But through him, I got kind of connected with the Erie Atheist Society, and what I wanted to do, and I told you this, was I want to go just speak on behalf of at least my church and say, I'm sorry that you are where you are, whatever's happened, and that, because honestly, we're supposed to you're supposed to be our primary people that we're looking to take care of and love on, and you don't feel that, I'm here to tell you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean?
And that speaks to your posture and your heart, and I think really a proper posture to those who are far from God. One of the reasons I had a little bit of trepidation with starting with that question is because I don't want people who are listening to think they have to be this bold, crazy person that's willing to go into a den of atheists to be an embedded influencer.
No.
Because I think, part of this role is just going right where you are, you can shine the light of Christ, and you've done that really, really well. And so I want to get into the school teacher side of things. Like you were in a Catholic school for a while, which allowed you probably a little bit more freedom to talk about faith issues and those and you've made a transition into a public school, which does not grant the same freedom to talk about faith issues.
Right.
And I would just like you to talk maybe about, delve into both of those arenas, but how did you integrate your faith into your work as a school teacher in the Catholic school, first of all, and then what changes have you seen as you've made this transition to more of a public school? How are you living it out?
Okay, yeah, sure. So the big difference, I guess, the big differences are the ones you would assume. We were supposed to promote Catholic Christianity. I think, looking back, that probably would not be the thing I was supposed to say, but I can't remember how I was supposed to say it. But you're supposed to the only negative I ever got on a review there was for not starting class in prayer. And I was like, wait, what?
Wow, you heathen.
Yeah, right. Wow. And so I'm like, oh, that's a negative. He's like, oh yeah, you got to start class in prayer. I was like, and so I kindly had this little, well, listen, I don't, trust me, I want all my kids to pray, but I don't want to ever force anybody to pray, because I feel like that's a thing, and that causes trouble. Can I, cultivate a Christian environment some other how? And they're like, oh yeah. So I started doing Christian readings. And so I got this pretty easy book for Christian readings for these groups of kids. But for my AP classes, the really, really hard classes, I'm like, they don't get a lot of rewards. I'm extra goofy for them, and I tell them a few more, stories. But I would read a C.S. Lewis daily devotional, and then after Christmas, I would read them the Screw Tape Letters, and they really liked that.
And let me just be clear: you weren't teaching theology or Bible or whatever; you were teaching physics, right?
Physics,
So I just want to make sure, people aren't thinking this is part of your class curriculum.
No, man. And so the thing that was the biggest thing there was I was allowed to stop. And kids played this well. Hey, Mr. Beibel, what about the Big Bang? How do you reconcile evolution with new Earth creationism? And I was like, okay, we do need to answer this. 20-minute, digression. And like I was aware
which was
of
their
that.
goal.
Oh yeah. I was aware of that, but it was always worth it, and I was able to do that. And I feel like, that was the big difference.
Yeah.
Where now in a public school, you are actually still allowed to express your faith. I have other good teacher friends that have a Bible study club after school in a public school. He wears a big cross, you know what I mean? You are just not allowed to promote your religion.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's always been a fine line. I was just talking with kids like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to do a podcast for my church. You know what I mean? Like, that's totally allowed. Like, what are you going to say? And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell them how big of a hypocrite I feel for going in the first place. but like, funny. I have some Christian students in there.
Yeah.
And they were asking about it, and I'm allowed to tell them.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing is, I can't be like, you guys are saying your prayers, right? Like, you should be. That's not allowed. That's and that it's an easy line to trip over. You know what I mean? So
I'm sure.
Those are the big differences.
Okay.
However, those differences, and you guys know this, but I think it's probably like, if it's the one thing I could like do in the world, is the real work wasn't different from place to place, right? Like, the real Christian work that I was doing at the private school is the same real work that I'm doing for Christ in a public school.
What do you mean by that?
Being a loving, caring Christian, showing fruits of the Spirit to my students, being a safe listener, providing, and being a good demonstration of like, this is what we're supposed to do. And I don't need to say, I'm doing this because Christ compels me, or I can't, you know what I mean? In the end, matter of fact, I've found, like with my little brother, with my little sister, with people that, are like not Christians, you're not gonna today convince them with telling them they're a sinner, or telling them they need to go read their Bible, or even just the story of Christ or the Bible. You have to be a you have to demonstrate what it's like, and they gotta want that. Like, my big brother Angus is kind to me, and he does not yell at me. I get, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm having a hard time not thinking of all the ways that I'm a horrible Christian. So I
I know. That happens to me. Right? When I'm listening to people's stories, I'm like, what am I doing here?
Big time. Like,
great.
A part of, we're talking about these dream disciple things. It's like it's like, are you a storyteller, a follower, embedded influencer, and a whatever
potential
is it?
Friend, yeah.
I'm like, can we talk about how much of a sinner, how frequently wrong I am, how often I struggle, and like
most people are well aware of that.
Those things, you know what I mean? Because I feel like
we're not aspiring to that. We're aspiring to this.
Yeah.
Well, right, but that's the thing is like I feel like if you're like, I'm a Christian, you set it out on the table real loudly and proudly, culturally, we've got a lot of challenges from our own culture that scare people away.
You bet.
So the only thing I think that is going to win people over are just showing fruits of the Spirit, and in hopes that they say, where did you get that from?
Yeah.
Then you can say, well, I think, I've been reading this, or
take us to boots on the ground on that one. So when you're thinking about in a public school, I mean, just think this week and last week with some of your students and your interactions. Like, can you point to some specific examples about how those fruits of the Spirit and that kind of posture of Christian humility kind of plays itself out? You talked about being a safe listener, and like, what are the kinds of things that you're being? Let me say one more thing. I grew up in a family of teachers, okay? So my whole family's teachers. And I know that there are two different kinds of teachers, ones that are safe to go to and ones that are literally putting in their time. Like they are reading their class notes that they've read for the last 20 years, and they're waiting for retirement. And so I'm not saying all teachers are like that. Believe me, I'm not here to knock on teachers. I'm just saying to not be one of those is something unique. And I'm just wondering, how do some of those interactions go? What are things students are coming to you with? What are some ways that those fruits of the Spirit are being played out in the classrooms and the hallways of your school through you?
Okay, yeah. So I think the way to start is, this funny little saying, if you teaching is easy and it's great if you're just gonna suck at it, right? Like roll in worksheets, don't talk to anybody. Mr. Beibel, that's inappropriate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be as boring and as distant and avoidant as possible. Roll out. You know what I mean? Retirement, pension, tenure, all that. But if you're a good teacher, you should have just been a lawyer or started a small business.
Well, that's good.
Because you need as many degrees,
Right.
and the amount of leadership that's required to have a successful class. Like imagine you're the boss and all your employees are like, hey, we don't want this job. We're forced to be at this job. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're going to be awesome at it. I'm like, no, we're not. Oh, okay. Well, that's my job then. All right. But
hilarious.
in the end, you're like, okay, and there you go. And everybody's doing their job. That's impressive and it's hard.
Yeah,
you know what I
that's a
mean?
good point.
You're right.
Everybody thinks like, I wasn't that bad of a kid. It's like, how old are you now? Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm not a kid anymore. Okay, yeah. And it wasn't just you, the good kids that I deal with. I dealt with like this kid, like throwing a pair of scissors like a ninja star, or like breaking this thing on my desk that I'm like, you're not even allowed over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just the amount of work that goes into grading late assignments. It's like, imagine a roller coaster. Every time somebody's like, hey, I want on, you stop the whole roller coaster to let one person on. It's like that, you know what I mean? But the ways that you be a good teacher, but also that your faith plays out is, it is very counter safety and security.
What do you mean by that?
It's my, you see everywhere online on social media, like cut people out of your life that don't serve you.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like
Eliminate
generate
the negative voice.
Yeah. And like, don't you want a side hustle? You know what I mean? And it's like boundaries, like have good boundaries. And Christianity kind of sometimes requires the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like as a teacher, it is my job, and this is true for a lot of like human service jobs. Like it's my job to make kids' problems my problems. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, hey, I really suck at this, I go, don't worry, I will do that for you. Where there's, mind you, 20 other kids, you know what I mean? So those problems are not just, I don't like math or I'm tired today. They go all the way to, what I spoke to you guys about earlier, which I'll just say is just simply too much to say out loud anywhere public. It's the things that kids deal with. It can be heinous. And they, it's kind of like this. We have all these rules in education. I'm a mandated reporter. If I even think there's a hint of child abuse occurring, I am reported to tell. And that sounds really safe, and it definitely protects me. But it can be not, the stats for mandated reporting are like I just read this the other day. It's like 95% of them come back unfounded.
Oh.
But here's the thing. Most of the time somebody gets mandated reported, it is occurring. So imagine somebody's like, hey, this person's dealing with this. Cops come to your house, investigate you. Whoever is abusing you now knows, oh my gosh, this little brat told on me. But cops don't get good info when they leave. Are you better off or worse?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like this, and it's kind of like this. Imagine we're fighting a war, okay? Say Germans versus Americans, World War I, foxholes everywhere, right? And the general comes out and he goes, hey, guys, new rule. From now on, in the middle of a fight, if we're fighting and you just don't want to fight anymore, simply stand up loud and clear so everybody from both sides can see you. Wave your hands and say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm scared. And I promise you, I worked it out with the Germans. They're not going to shoot. We're all just going to wait, and you're going to be allowed to get up and walk out. Would you take them up on that offer? That's the effect that a lot of the rules for protecting teachers and protecting students really have.
Yeah.
It's like, no thanks.
Well, the amazing thing is, though, that those, some of the, situations that you have to deal with kids coming to you with stuff, like, you're right. The at some level, the fact that they can come to you and that they do come to you is a testament to the fact that you've created a safe enough environment and you've exhibited those fruits of the Spirit. We talk about, like, people who find their calling in the, outside the walls of the church, essentially are like pastors of a parish. There's a parish that person. I think about my dad. When I think about teachers, and my dad was, to his credit, became the pastor, if you will, of a public school, like a large public school. That wasn't his title. That was not what the administration called him. But like, when students would go to him for the same reason people in our congregation would come to me or to one of our pastors. It's like, because I trust that person, I know that person, I've seen the fruit of their life. I believe that they have something that they could speak into my life. I think you're the same way. And I guess I'm just kind of connecting those dots of saying, part of that, living out the fruit of the Spirit is being an available shepherd, for people's outside of school issues that they might not have anywhere else to go to talk about those things.
Yeah. Like what we said, our national culture kind of pushes. You have to have the opposite of those. You have to have low boundaries for a kid to feel safe to come tell you something.
That makes sense.
Because a lot of times, and here's the thing, the school that I work for now is the very best set of administration I've ever even heard of.
Wow.
Like, I love all three principals that I've had there. They're awesome. I'm like baffled at how good they are with employees and students alike and how well they manage that. We even have awesome guidance counselors. But at the end, a school is always outgunned. And I'm sorry for all these like military references too. But like, you tell a kid, like, look, hey, don't talk to these people. Go talk to these people. Like, who are those people? Well, they're professionals and they're really busy and they're not at all like you. And there's going to be a line of other kids. But, so if you don't want to talk to them, we secretly won't mind because we're that busy. But that's who you're supposed to go talk to, not your teachers. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's very difficult. It'd be like this. Sorry for another analogy, but like if I'm your boss, no, that's silly. If you're my boss and I work for you and I have something wrong and I come tell you, like, boss, I just went through this. And you're like, oh man, okay. Tell you what, Angus, don't worry. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to make sure that nobody talks to you about that. And that, there's these designated people and I'm gonna press you to go there, but I will make sure nobody talks to you about that and nobody brings that up. And I will make sure that you will not damage them in any way. That is what it is like for a kid with a big issue. It's sad. It is very sad. And so you have such a hard time not listening to a kid. But as soon as you do listen to a kid and you say, hey, a kid just told me this, like all these bells and whistles go off and it's like alert, you know what I mean? So
let me zoom out for a minute and then then I got one final question. But let me zoom out and say, to just talk in general about living out your calling and your spiritual convictions in a public setting. Like, just what are some maybe words of wisdom that you would think even outside the teacher industry, things you've learned about, if somebody's in a business or an office somewhere or a nonprofit or whatever, like, how would you talk about just living out your calling outside the walls of the church?
Okay. Honestly, and I got this from you when I went to the Erie Atheist Society, I was like, okay, what if they ask me this? What do I say? What do I say? And you said, and I think about it often. You go, look, if they ask you that, whatever, we're good. We can handle it. But just, that's not what it's about. Just keep it focused, at least for yourself, on the story of Jesus. And that is really it. Like, I wish we had the whole Bible was just about Jesus. But like, we have such a good example. He is just the best example we've ever had of what a human's supposed to be like. And, you know, for as short of a history we have of him, he does say this and he does say that, but you can also find a lot of direction in the things that he did not do.
Wow.
That's good.
He did not throw a fit about the government. He didn't. He did not say, yo, I am so upset about these taxes. He just paid them twice, right? He did not say, yo, we're being oppressed and you better take care of yourselves. He goes, no, you get a cloak. And you know what? You need a staff. You can take a staff. That's it. He didn't say, yo, you protect me at all. He never said that.
Yeah.
He didn't say that. He said, when they don't listen to you, don't be a jerk. He didn't say, throw a fit. He didn't say, talk to your local whatevers. He said, wipe the dust from your feet. That's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like all the things that a lot of times people think they are doing, Jesus didn't say to do that. In fact, he was under the most oppressive government Christians have ever been in. He was in danger, and he did not, you know, even Peter. Peter's like, no, protect me. He's like, get behind me, Satan. You know what I mean? Like Jesus, you know, I don't know how to say this right, but like, we need to focus less on our own safety and security and kind of be available a little bit for the safety and security of others. We don't need to promote Jesus more than we need to behave the way he told us to.
That's really great. The words that we talked about a couple weeks ago, I don't even remember what it was a part of, but we talked about being interruptible, you know, and I think that's just like a very simple skill that it's what you're describing.
Big time.
For people who are trying to live out their faith in non-church spaces, is to go, are you willing to be interruptible for people when they need somebody, you know, to look out for them. So that's a cool story. So here's my last question for you. We've got a podcast for pastors and church leaders. And so what do you need from the church that would help you to live out your faith outside the walls more effectively?
I am so ready for this question. You ready?
Wow. Okay.
And it's so short and sweet. You know what I really need?
What do you need?
I need assignments.
Wow.
I need assignments. I'm too much of a dummy. I was not raised a Christian. I was not raised in like this, how to have relationships. I was not raised in like, when you get angry, here's what you do. I need assignments. And so my whole life has not been directed towards like, hey, be ready, be responsible to help, make plans for that. I need help with that. I love it. And I think a lot of us do, because you know, even in Bible study, sometimes it's like, man, we should be doing something. What are we gonna do? It's like, you know what I mean? So I can personally now I can personally think of so many assignments that, and I'm not saying it's your, you know, responsibility to hold us accountable. Sure. But you know, I'll tell you, I'll give you examples. When you gave us that little card and you were like, hey, go meet your neighbors. You did. And fruit grew.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I want that for everybody in a church.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you how to do that or what to do differently, but
really
to
good
make
advice.
things like that, like, you know, you look at the early church, they were worshiping, but like every paragraph where they describe it, they're like, and we were double checking and making sure everybody was fed. We're like, are there any widows? Okay, we giving away our stuff. Like, we're, you know, our whole culture is like I stay in my house and safety and security that are mine need to stay mine, and that's the goal. You know what I mean? So assignments where I am simply told to leave that.
That's great.
I love it. You know, I think that reminds me of is we're just getting ready to start a weekly email from me. It'll be videos to start anyway, and then it'll be like a 3 to 5 minute video, but it's almost exactly what you're describing. It's like, here's this week's assignment for those living out your faith outside the walls. Try this, wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And we're starting that in March. So
pumped, man.
Good idea.
Pumped. I knew it.
Thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, it was really
it's
good.
awesome anytime we get to spend time with you. So thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Angus.
That was so good. I'm gonna blow this, but the quote of the interview was, "Teaching is really easy if you suck."
I know. I want to get that shirt for all my teacher friends. That was awesome. Yeah, it's really easy if you suck at it. Yeah, it is.
That could go for most anything. You could make that a T-shirt for all kind of industries.
Yeah. I just love his passion for what he's doing.
Got such a great energy.
Great energy, yeah. That was good. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit, continuing in what we're learning. What happened this week? Yeah,
so listen, you said at the beginning, that this is maybe one of our biggest organizational struggles.
I think it is.
All right. Well, let me say what it is.
No, I think fault.
I think you're right. Yeah. And let me say what it is. So what happened this week was I had this epiphany of like about 3 or 4 different conversations added up to we have a document for that.
We already figured that out.
We figured that out and put it in a file, and now we don't have that document anymore in the atmosphere of our organization so that people are aware of it. And, so I'll give you a couple examples.
Yeah, that's good.
We have like kind of a new wave of people because of this partnership model that we're talking about, a new wave of people who are like wanting to start new ministries, either within or outside the church, and kind of coming and saying, okay, how's the church going to support me? And so, and what do I do?
Yeah.
And so I had this moment of like, oh, we had a process for this about 15 years ago, how to start a ministry. So I'm like literally searching through my computer, how to start a ministry, found a document, printed it out. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a lot of old language, but this is the right stuff.
It's the right steps.
It's the right stuff. So, dust it off, revive some of the wording and language and all that kind of stuff. And it's there. And so, and there's, we talk about foundational partnership, which is us, some years ago because of this same thing. Like lots of people starting stuff, lots of ministry happening through our folks. We had to kind of declare these are our foundational ministries, and we define those as like if they went away, we would cease to be a church that we are, kind of thing. So kids ministry on a Sunday, worship ministry, we had 5 or 6, care and support, 5 or 6 ministries, and said, those are our foundational ministries. Those ministries get our primary time, attention, money, promotional, leverage. And then we divided it at that time into partnership 1, partner 2, partner 3. So partner 1 got a little bit of, staff energy and airtime and, all that kind of stuff. Partner 3 was just like, you're on your own, but we want to support you as a leader. And so again, as all this is taking shape, I'm like, foundational partnership.
Right. And the thing is, all the ministries will look different, but the grid is the same.
That's right.
So, which is maddening that we have it. Anyway.
But so in your estimation, when you say this is a big problem organizationally, what do you mean by that? Like what part of it?
I think the part of it so we have, and it's probably we don't know how many, couple dozen things like this.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of time wasted where people are just kind of spinning their wheels, no fault of their own. They just think we haven't figured it out because they're newer to staff or it's a volunteer or, something like that. So someone could be down the road something for like a month and come to you and like this example and say, what do we do about it? And you just have to search it. So part of it is like time wasting. And part of it I think is that we do move quickly to innovation, and I think the Achilles heel is that we don't have a system for keeping these things that are really critical and foundational in the atmosphere for our full staff.
Yeah. I think we've said before, and I actually got some pushback on this recently, but we've said before that one of the weaknesses of our organization is execution. Like we have lots of good ideas, but seeing something through to the end can be challenging. Yeah. And so this is kind of a byproduct of that. Like, I feel like, and the other thing I was thinking as you were talking that's related to the innovation side is also because of our volunteer culture, there's a frequent turnover of leaders in different roles. Yep. And so if you get 2 or 3 or 4 leaders down the train from when we had a document like that was kind of guiding things, to trust the fact that particular thing was passed along for 4 generations is probably dumb. Right. Like, so we have to have a better kind of handle on what are those key things that from leader to leader to leader to leader, when we're doing onboarding or whatever it is, that it's like, these are the things that are really, really critical, more than just, what's my phone extension and how do I make copies? No. It's like, what are the core things that we use almost for decision making?
It really is at that level. It's those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I feel like that stuff probably, to our shame, is down the importance list when it comes to bringing new people into roles. And so, I think it's a learning, and I'm not positive what to do about it, but I think
if anybody has any advice.
I became very aware of it this last week because it seemed like there were 3 or 4 of those examples.
Because the other thing we can't do is every time we get a new staff person or volunteer, we can't give them a packet of 24 essential documents.
Right. Well, and also that feels like a straitjacket.
Right.
So it is this,
it has to be situational.
And it is this tension between freedom and
totally.
Like, because you want people to lead and to be free to make some decisions, but you also don't want them reinventing wheels that we've already invented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Help us, please. All right, that's it for today. If you liked today's episode, you can tell us by leaving a rating or review, 5 stars if you did. And you can find detailed show notes, related resources over at dereksanford.com/reinventing church. That's also where you can subscribe to his weekly newsletter, get all the free tools, latest tools and blog posts. And we have some really good episodes coming up, so don't forget to subscribe. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.